The visitor from the stars. It was a cold, quiet night in the countryside. The forest stretched endlessly, blanketed in mist, with only the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl breaking the silence. David Walker sat in his small cabin, tinkering with a half-built drone on his cluttered workbench. Life had been uneventful for him since he left the bustling city. As an inventor, he enjoyed the solitude. But tonight, something felt different, an odd tension in the air. Suddenly, a streak of light tore through the night sky, brighter and faster than any shooting star. It wasn't just falling, it was crashing. The ground trembled as a deafening boom echoed through the forest. David's tools clattered to the floor as he stumbled to his feet, heart pounding. He rushed to the window and saw smoke rising in the distance, a faint orange glow lighting up the trees. Curiosity burned in his chest. Grabbing a flashlight and a jacket, David set out toward the source of the crash. As he approached the site, the smell of burnt metal and earth grew stronger. Broken tree branches and scorched ground marked the path of destruction. When he finally reached the clearing, what he saw left him speechless. In the middle of the charred earth lay a sleek, silver craft, unlike anything he had ever seen. It was small, almost the size of a car, with a strange, shimmering surface that seemed to ripple under the moonlight. Sparks flew from its damaged hull, and a low humming noise emanated from within. David's mind raced. Could it be a military experiment? A secret drone? No, this was something else, something otherworldly. Before he could process the thought, a soft, pained sound caught his attention. He turned his flashlight toward the craft and froze. Emerging from the wreckage was a figure, tall, slender, and unmistakably alien. The being had pale, almost translucent skin that glowed faintly, and large, expressive eyes that shimmered like liquid silver. She clutched her side, limping as she struggled to stand. Her movements were weak, but her gaze was sharp, filled with both fear and determination. "Help," she said in a trembling voice, her English broken but understandable. David's instinct was to run, but something about her vulnerability stopped him. She looked desperate, like someone who had no other option. He stepped forward cautiously, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "Are you okay?" he asked, feeling foolish for such a simple question. She nodded weakly, then collapsed onto her knees. David rushed to her side, noticing a strange, glowing wound on her abdomen. Her body was lighter than he expected as he helped her up, almost as if gravity didn't fully apply to her. "We need to get you out of here," he said. The craft's hum was growing louder, and he didn't want to stick around in case it exploded, or worse, attracted unwanted attention. The alien woman looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and pain. "Danger, they follow," she whispered. David didn't understand what she meant, but the urgency in her voice was clear. He helped her to her feet and led her away from the crash site, moving as quickly as he could. As they made their way through the forest, the trees provided some cover, but David couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced over his shoulder, half expecting someone, or something, to appear. "Who's following you?" he asked, his voice low. She struggled to speak, each word seeming to cost her great effort. "They want me. Must not find." Her cryptic words sent a chill down David's spine. Whoever was after her, it sounded serious. He didn't press for more information, focusing instead on getting her to safety. After what felt like hours, they finally reached David's cabin. He helped her inside and eased her onto the couch. She winced in pain, clutching her wound, as David grabbed his first aid kit. "I don't know if this will work on you," he admitted, holding up the supplies. She managed a faint smile. "Try." David cleaned the wound carefully, noticing how her skin seemed to repair itself slowly, almost like it was alive, in a way he couldn't comprehend. As he worked, she watched him with those unblinking, silver eyes. "You, kind," she said softly. David shrugged, trying to hide his unease. "I couldn't just leave you there." For a moment, the room was silent, save for the crackle of the fireplace. Then she spoke again, her voice stronger this time. "My name, Alaria," she said, her accent heavy but her tone sincere. David nodded. "I'm David." Before he could say more, a loud whirring noise pierced the air outside. David froze, his heart racing. Alaria's eyes widened in fear. "They found us," she whispered. David grabbed a flashlight and peered out the window. In the distance, a drone hovered above the treetops, its red light scanning the ground. "Stay here," David said, his mind racing with ideas. He had no idea who was after her, but one thing was clear: he couldn't let them take her. As the drone moved closer, David realized he had just stepped into something far bigger than himself. And there was no turning back now. A plea for help. David's cabin felt eerily quiet, the tension from the forest still lingering in the air. Alaria sat on his couch, her luminous skin dimming slightly, as if reflecting her fading strength. Her large, silver eyes scanned her surroundings with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. She looked out of place in the simple, rustic room, an alien in a world not her own. David paced near the window, his thoughts racing. The drone had passed earlier, but he knew it wouldn't be long before whoever was controlling it came looking. The crash wasn't going to stay a secret. "All right," he said, turning to face her. "You need to tell me what's going on. Why are they after you?" Alaria hesitated, her thin fingers clutching the edge of the blanket he'd given her. "My people, we are dying," she said slowly, her voice soft but filled with weight. "Dying?" David repeated, frowning. "What do you mean?" She closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering her strength. When she opened them again, they glimmered with sorrow. "We cannot create life. Our children stopped coming. Our world empty." David's heart sank at the raw emotion in her voice. He couldn't imagine a world without children, without new generations to carry on. "How long has this been happening?" "Centuries," Alaria replied. "We tried everything. Science, machines, but nothing works." She reached into a small pouch on her belt, pulling out a translucent device. She pressed it, and a faint hologram appeared, flickering in the dim light. It showed a beautiful world. Towering cities made of crystal, skies filled with shimmering lights, and beings like Alaria walking among lush, green landscapes. "This was my home," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Now, it is this." The image shifted to a barren wasteland, with dark clouds swirling over cracked, lifeless ground. David felt a lump in his throat. "What does this have to do with Earth?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. Alaria looked at him, her silver eyes locking onto his. "Your kind, humans, are the key. Your life, it is strong, different." David blinked, taken aback. "You think humans can fix this? I'm just an inventor. I tinker with gadgets, not whatever this is." "You don't understand," Alaria said, leaning forward despite her obvious pain. "It is not about tools. It is your essence. Your species still believes in life, in connection. My people forgot. We lost what made us alive." David shook his head, confused and overwhelmed. "So what? You want me to what? Save your entire species?" Alaria didn't answer immediately. Instead, she held his gaze, her expression pleading. "I came here with a hope. The dream. I don't know if it is possible, but you saved me. Maybe you can help more." David sighed, running a hand through his hair. "This is insane. I don't even know where to start." Before Alaria could respond, a loud thud sounded from outside. David froze, his blood turning cold. He gestured for her to stay quiet and crept toward the window. In the distance, shadows moved between the trees. They were too tall, too deliberate to be animals. Whoever, or whatever, was out there was getting closer. "They're here," Illyria whispered, her voice trembling. David turned to her, his mind racing. He had no weapons, no plan, and no idea what he was up against. But one thing was clear: he couldn't let them take her. "All right," he said, grabbing a small toolbox from the corner. "If you want my help, you're going to have to trust me. Can you walk?" Illyria nodded weakly, her determination shining through her exhaustion. "Good," David said, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his chest. "Because we're not sticking around to find out what they want." He led her out the back door, the two of them slipping into the shadows of the forest. The night was dark and silent, except for the distant sound of crunching leaves and the occasional metallic whir. David's heart pounded with every step, but he kept moving, determined to stay ahead of their pursuers. As they made their way through the woods, Illyria spoke softly, her words barely audible. "Thank you for not leaving me." David glanced at her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this mess." But deep down, he knew he couldn't abandon her. Whatever she was, whatever her people needed, she had come here with nothing but hope. And if he could give her even a sliver of that, it was worth the risk. The forest stretched ahead of them, dark and full of unknown dangers. But for the first time in years, David felt a sense of purpose, a reason to keep going, no matter the cost. The race against time. The morning sun broke through the dense forest, casting long golden rays over the trees. David's underground lab, hidden beneath a camouflaged shed, was a stark contrast to the chaos they had narrowly escaped the night before. Inside, the hum of machinery and the faint glow of monitors filled the air as David worked furiously. Illyria sat quietly on a makeshift bench, her glowing skin dimmed by exhaustion. Her silver eyes watched David intently as he darted between workstations, typing commands, analyzing data, and occasionally muttering to himself. She could sense his unease. "You are afraid," she said softly, breaking the silence. David paused, glancing at her. "Afraid? No. Terrified. Absolutely." He gestured toward a monitor displaying a live satellite feed. "They're still out there, probably combing the forest as we speak. And you're a walking beacon." Illyria tilted her head, confused. "Beacon." David sighed, pointing to the faint, glowing moon on her side. "That. Whatever's in your system, it's like a flare. If they've got the tech to track you, and I'm guessing they do, we don't have much time before they find this place." Illyria's gaze dropped, a mixture of guilt and determination crossing her face. "I did not mean to bring this danger to you. I will go if—" "You're not going anywhere," David interrupted firmly. "Not until we figure out how to fix whatever this is." He pulled up a new set of readings on the screen, gesturing for her to come closer. "Look at this. Your biology. It's incredible. You're healing faster than anything I've ever seen, but it's incomplete, like your body's fighting against itself." Illyria studied the data, her expression unreadable. "Our bodies have changed. We adapted too much. We forgot how to create life. And now we are breaking." David frowned, the weight of her words settling in. "You keep saying humans are the key. Why? What makes us different?" Illyria hesitated, as if searching for the right words. Finally, she spoke, her voice tinged with both awe and sadness. "Your kind still remembers. Connection, emotion, love. You live for more than survival. That essence, that spark, it is what we lost. It is what we need." David stared at her, trying to process the enormity of what she was saying. "You think, what? That humans can somehow reignite that spark in your people? That's not science. That's hope," Illyria finished, her silver eyes meeting his. "It is all we have left." Before David could respond, a loud, mechanical buzz filled the air. He froze, his stomach sinking. Illyria's expression darkened, her glowing skin flaring faintly as if reacting to the danger. "They are here," she whispered. David rushed to the monitors, pulling up a live feed from the perimeter cameras he'd installed around the lab. The screen showed a sleek, black vehicle parked near the edge of the forest. Figures in tactical suits, armed with advanced weaponry, fanned out, scanning the area with handheld devices. "Great," David muttered. They brought the big guns. Ilaria stood, her movements slow but steady. "You must let me go. They will not stop until they have me." "Not a chance," David snapped, grabbing a small device from his workbench. "I didn't risk my life dragging you out of that crash just to hand you over now. Besides, I've got a plan." "Plan?" Ilaria asked, her tone skeptical. David smirked, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, plan. Step 1, don't die. Step 2, make them regret showing up." He handed her a small round device. "This is a signal jammer. It'll mess with their trackers, buy us some time. But we'll need to move fast." Ilaria took the device, her fingers brushing against his. "You risk much for me, David." "Why?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "Because someone has to. Now, come on." The two of them hurried through a hidden tunnel leading out of the lab. The passage was narrow and dark, the walls reinforced with old steel plating. David had built it years ago, never imagining he'd actually need to use it. As they emerged into the forest, the distant hum of drones grew louder. David glanced at Ilaria, who was clutching the jammer tightly. Her glow had dimmed almost completely, making her look more human, fragile, even. "Stay close," he said, his voice low. They moved quickly but carefully, ducking behind trees and weaving through the dense underbrush. The sound of voices and heavy boots grew closer, forcing them to slow down. David motioned for Ilaria to stop, his eyes scanning the area. He spotted a drone hovering nearby, its red light sweeping the ground. With a quick motion, he pulled out a small EMP grenade from his pack and tossed it. The grenade detonated with a soft crackle, and the drone dropped to the ground, lifeless. "Nice," David muttered, but his relief was short-lived. A shout echoed through the forest, followed by the unmistakable sound of weapons being armed. "They found us," Ilaria said, her voice calm despite the rising tension. "Yeah," David replied, his jaw tightening. "But they're not taking us without a fight." A glimmer of hope. The underground lab was in chaos. Sparks flew from overworked circuits, monitors blinked erratically, and the hum of machinery filled the air. David's hands moved quickly across the controls, his face tense with determination. Beside him, Ilaria watched silently, her silver eyes flickering with faint hope as her pale skin glowed softly in the dim light. For hours, David had been working on a device, a prototype that might hold the key to solving her people's plight. It was a mix of human engineering and the alien technology he'd salvaged from her crashed ship. The result was a machine that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie, sleek, metallic, and humming with an energy that seemed almost alive. "This is it," David said, stepping back and wiping sweat from his brow. "If this works, it could jumpstart your biological system and—" He paused, glancing at her. "Well, maybe give your people a fighting chance." Ilaria approached the device, her gaze filled with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "You are certain it will work?" David hesitated. "No, not even a little. But it's the best shot we've got." She nodded, her expression unreadable. "Then we must try." David adjusted the machine's settings and gestured for her to sit in the center of the glowing platform. As she stepped onto it, the faint hum of the device grew louder, the lights on its surface pulsing in sync with her movements. "All right," David said, his voice steady despite the knot of anxiety in his chest. "This might feel strange." Ilaria smiled faintly. "Stranger than falling from the stars." He chuckled despite himself. "Fair point. Ready?" She nodded. David flipped a switch, and the device roared to life. A beam of light surrounded Alaria, shimmering with hues of blue and gold. Her body stiffened as the energy enveloped her, her glow intensifying until it was almost blinding. At first, it seemed to be working. The readings on the monitor spiked, and Alaria's energy level surged. But then, something went wrong. The machine began to overheat, its hum turning into a high-pitched whine. Sparks flew, and the room was bathed in red warning lights. "David!" Alaria cried out, her voice strained. David scrambled to shut the machine down, his fingers flying across the controls. "Hold on. I've almost got it." The device sparked violently, and with a deafening crack, it powered down. Alaria collapsed to the ground, her glow dimming as she struggled to catch her breath. David rushed to her side, panic etched across his face. "Alaria, are you okay?" She nodded weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am. Alive." He let out a shaky breath, relief flooding through him. But as he looked at the now ruined device, his heart sank. "I don't get it. The calculations were perfect. It should have worked." Alaria placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly gentle. "You did your best. That is, more than anyone has done for us in centuries." David stared at her, his frustration giving way to admiration. Despite everything, she still had hope. "We'll try again," he said firmly. "There has to be a way." Before she could respond, an alarm blared, cutting through the tense silence. David's head snapped toward the monitors, where a live feed from the perimeter cameras showed movement. "They'd found us," he muttered, his blood running cold. Alaria's expression hardened. "You must go. They will not stop until—" "Stop," David interrupted, standing and grabbing a small bag of tools. "I'm not leaving you, and we're not giving up. Come on, we've got to move." He helped her to her feet, and together they hurried toward the escape tunnel at the back of the lab. As they descended into the darkness, David's mind raced. The device had failed, but it wasn't the end. He still had the data, and he still had Alaria. And as long as they were both alive, there was still hope. Sacrifice and survival. The escape tunnel was pitch black, save for the faint glow emanating from Alaria's skin. David led the way, his flashlight cutting through the darkness as they moved quickly and quietly. Every sound echoed off the reinforced walls, a reminder that their time was running out. Behind them, the faint rumble of heavy boots and muffled voices grew louder. Their pursuers were close, too close. David clenched his jaw, gripping the small device in his hand tightly. It was a crude decoy, a hastily rigged transmitter emitting a signal designed to mimic Alaria's unique energy signature. "If this works, they'll think we doubled back," David whispered, glancing over his shoulder. Alaria nodded, her expression unreadable. She moved with surprising grace despite her exhaustion, her silvery eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "You should go," she said softly. "Leave me. If they capture me, you will be safe." David stopped abruptly, turning to face her. "Safe? They'll kill me just for knowing you exist. And even if they didn't, I'm not about to abandon you. So stop asking." Her lips parted as if to argue, but she closed them again, her gaze softening. "You risk everything for me. Why?" "Because it's the right thing to do," David replied simply. "Now come on." They reached the end of the tunnel, emerging into a dense thicket of trees. David paused, scanning the area. The air was cool and still, but the distant hum of drones was unmistakable. "They're using heat sensors," David muttered. He pulled a small thermal blanket from his pack and handed it to Alaria. "Wrap this around yourself. It'll buy us a few minutes." Alaria hesitated before taking the blanket. "You think of everything." David smirked. "Not everything. Just the important stuff." They moved deeper into the forest, staying low and keeping to the shadows. David's decoy had done its job, at least temporarily. The voices and drones had shifted direction, heading back toward the lab. But their relief was short-lived. A sharp, mechanical chirp cut through the air, followed by a beam of light sweeping through the trees. "Go," David hissed, pushing Ilaria ahead. They broke into a run, their footsteps muffled by the forest floor. The light chased them, growing closer with each passing second. David's mind raced, searching for a solution. Ahead, the forest opened into a narrow ravine. David skidded to a halt, his heart pounding. The drop was steep, and the rocky terrain below looked unforgiving. "This way," he said, pulling Ilaria toward a cluster of large boulders near the edge. As they crouched behind the rocks, the sound of their pursuers grew louder. David peeked over the edge, his mind calculating their chances. "David," Ilaria whispered, her voice trembling. "You must leave me. I can distract them." "Are you serious?" David shot back, his tone sharp. "I didn't drag you out of that crash just to let them take you now." "But you—" "No," he said firmly. "I'm not leaving you." End of discussion. Before she could respond, the first of their pursuers appeared. A soldier in sleek, black armor, his weapon glowing faintly in the dim light. David's pulse quickened. "Stay here," he whispered. Without waiting for her response, he darted out from behind the boulders, waving his arms. "Hey, over here." The soldier turned, his weapon trained on David. David took off running, leading the soldier away from Ilaria. More soldiers appeared, their voices echoing through the ravine as they gave chase. Ilaria watched in horror as David disappeared into the shadows. Her heart ached with a strange, unfamiliar emotion, one she couldn't quite name. Minutes passed, each one feeling like an eternity. The sound of footsteps faded, replaced by the distant hum of drones. Finally, David stumbled back into view, his face flushed, and his breathing labored. "They're heading west," he panted, collapsing beside her. "We've got maybe 5 minutes before they figure out I duped them." Ilaria stared at him, her eyes shimmering with gratitude and something deeper. "You could have escaped. Why didn't you?" David managed a weak smile. "Because you're not just an alien or some mission to me. You're important." She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch gentle. "You are unlike anyone I have ever known, David." He chuckled, though it came out more like a wheeze. "Yeah, well, don't get used to it. We're not out of this yet." As the two of them prepared to move again, a faint glimmer of hope flickered between them, a fragile but undeniable bond forged in the face of impossible odds. The final attempt. The abandoned observatory sat atop a hill, its rusted dome silhouetted against the star-filled sky. David and Ilaria climbed the steep path in silence, their movements slow and deliberate. Both were exhausted, their bodies aching from days of running, but neither could afford to stop. This was their last hope. Inside the observatory, the air was thick with dust, and old equipment lay scattered across the floor. David wasted no time, heading straight to the control console at the center of the room. He pulled out the salvaged pieces of Ilaria's technology and began assembling the final version of the device that had almost worked before. "This place is strange," Ilaria said, her voice echoing softly in the cavernous space. "It used to be a hub for discovery," David replied without looking up, his hands busy connecting wires. "Scientists used it to study the stars, to learn about what's out there. People used to believe that understanding the universe could solve anything." Ilaria tilted her head, her silver eyes scanning the room. "Did it?" David paused for a moment, then gave a half-smile. "Not really. But sometimes belief is enough to keep going." Her gaze softened as she watched him work. "You believe in this, in me." David glanced at her, his expression serious. "I do. And not just because you're the key to saving your people. You're worth saving, Ilaria." For a moment, there was silence between them. Then, Ilaria stepped forward, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "Thank you, David, for everything." He cleared his throat, breaking the moment. "All right, let's not get sentimental yet. We still have to make this thing work." David activated the power source, and the device hummed to life. The central core began to glow, pulsing with a warm golden light. He motioned for Ilaria to step onto the platform. "This is it," he said. "If we've got the calibration right, this should realign your biological systems. It might even save my people." Ilaria finished, her voice steadied despite the weight of the moment. She stepped onto the platform, the golden light surrounding her. Her glow intensified as the device sensed with her energy. David monitored the readings, his heart pounding. Everything was going smoothly, too smoothly. Suddenly, the observatory's walls vibrated, and a low rumble filled the air. David looked up, his stomach sinking. "They're here," he muttered, rushing to the window. A group of black-clad soldiers moved up the hill, their weapons gleaming under the moonlight. Drones buzzed overhead, their red lights sweeping the area. "We don't have time," David said, turning back to Ilaria. "This thing needs a few more minutes to finish." Ilaria stepped off the platform. "Then we stop them." "Are you out of your mind?" David snapped. "You're still weak. And this is your only chance." She met his gaze, her expression calm but resolute. "I will not let them destroy everything you have done. If they reach this place, your work will be lost. Your sacrifice will be for nothing." David shook his head, his mind racing. "No, if anyone's going out there, it's me. You stay here and finish the process." Ilaria placed a hand on his chest, stopping him. "You have given me hope, David. Let me protect yours." Before he could argue, she stepped outside, her glowing form lighting up the darkness. The soldiers hesitated, their weapons raised but uncertain. Ilaria stood tall, her voice ringing out across the hill. "I am what you seek. Leave the human out of this." David watched from the observatory, his heart hammering in his chest. He didn't know what she was planning, but he couldn't let her face them alone. Grabbing a small EMP grenade from his pack, he sprinted outside, his footsteps barely audible over the sound of the soldiers' approach. Ilaria raised her arms, her glow intensifying. The soldiers flinched as a wave of energy radiated from her, knocking their drones out of the sky. David took the opportunity to toss the grenade. It detonated with a sharp crack, sending the soldiers' equipment into disarray. "Run!" he shouted, grabbing Ilaria's hand. They bolted back into the observatory, slamming the heavy door shut behind them. David locked it, his chest heaving. The device's light reached its peak, bathing the room in a golden glow. Ilaria stepped onto the platform, her body trembling as the machine completed its work. The soldiers pounded on the door, their shouts growing louder. David stood in front of the controls, ready to destroy the device if they got inside. Then, as suddenly as it began, the device powered down. Ilaria collapsed to her knees, her glow soft but steady. She looked up at David, her eyes shimmering with tears. "It worked," she said, her voice barely a whisper. David helped her to her feet, relief flooding through him. But their moment was short-lived. The door burst open, and the soldiers stormed in. David raised his hands, shielding Ilaria. "Take me if you want, but leave her alone." The lead soldier hesitated, glancing at Ilaria. She stepped forward, her posture strong and unyielding. "You cannot take what I have become," she said, her voice filled with quiet power. The soldiers froze, their weapons trembling in their hands. Ilaria's glow intensified, and for the first time, David saw not just an alien, but a force of life itself. A new beginning. The dawn broke over the hilltop, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The observatory stood silent now, its rusted walls bathed in the soft light of a new day. Inside, David sat slumped against the wall, his face streaked with dirt and exhaustion. Across from him, Ilaria stood at the center of the room, her form radiant. Her silvery skin shimmered faintly, and her eyes, once filled with despair, now held a quiet determination. The device had worked, and something deep within her had changed. "You feel Different, David said, his voice hoarse but curious. Ilaria nodded, her expression serene. The energy, it has realigned me. My body remembers what it was meant to be. She placed a hand over her chest, her glow intensifying slightly. Life, it is possible again. David managed a small smile. That's incredible. We did it. Before they could say more, a faint rustling outside caught their attention. David tensed, his hand instinctively reaching for a makeshift weapon. But it wasn't the soldiers. A sleek triangular ship descended silently into the clearing, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. Ilaria's people had come. The ship's door slid open, and two figures stepped out, their features similar to Ilaria's but duller, their glow nearly extinguished. They approached hesitantly, their movements cautious. "Ilaria," one of them said, their voice carrying both surprise and awe. "We thought we lost you." "You almost did," she replied, her tone firm. "But I am here, and I bring hope." The two aliens exchanged glances before nodding. "We will listen." Ilaria turned to David, her expression softening. "I must go. My people need this knowledge, this chance, but I will not forget what you have done for me, for us." David stood, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "I didn't do this alone. You had the courage to fight, to believe. That's what made the difference." She stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "You gave me a gift no one else could hope. And for that you will always have a place among the stars." David chuckled lightly, though his voice cracked. "Just make sure your people don't come back and conquer us. We're not ready for that." Ilaria smiled, the faintest hint of amusement in her glowing eyes. "We will come back, but only as friends." The two aliens from the ship stepped forward, gesturing for Ilaria to join them. She hesitated, glancing back at David one last time. "Goodbye, David Walker. May your people never lose their spark." With that, she turned and boarded the ship. The door closed behind her, and the vessel rose silently into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. David stood alone in the clearing, the hum of the ship fading into the morning air. For a long moment, he simply stared at the horizon, his thoughts swirling. He had saved her, yes, but she had changed him too. Weeks passed, and life in the small cabin returned to its quiet rhythm. David spent his days tinkering with inventions, though his thoughts often wandered to the stars. He wondered if Ilaria and her people had succeeded, if her glow had sparked a new beginning for her world. One crisp evening, as David sat on his porch, a soft hum filled the air. He looked up to see a small glowing object descending from the sky. It was no larger than a basketball, its surface smooth and metallic. The object landed gently in the clearing, and a hologram flickered to life. It was Ilaria, holding a small glowing child in her arms. "David," her voice echoed, warm and full of gratitude. "Because of you, my people have a future. This is my daughter, born of hope. She will know of Earth, of humanity, and of the man who gave us life. Thank you." The hologram faded, leaving David staring at the spot where it had been. For the first time in years, he felt something stir deep within him, a sense of purpose, of connection. As he gazed at the stars, a smile crossed his face. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. Humanity had left its mark among the stars, and the stars had left their mark on him.